Hi everybody, welcome back to Dobby Books, and let me give you a little update of what's been going on. This was supposed to have been my final semester at college, and then I would have finally finished that undergraduate degree that I promised myself a zillion years ago. But life being what it is, I am my mother's caregiver. I have been for the last several years, and she's been fairly independent here at home. But as of last month in December, she was placed on hospice care. So the time that she's going to need for me to look after her has increased considerably. So after really struggling with what am I going to do about this final semester, I'd already applied for graduation. In the end, I realized that even if I took a couple of classes and still looked after my mother, that the stress would be more than it needed to be during this time. So I made a tough decision and decided to take a leave of absence for the spring semester. And I don't know how quickly or not things will finish out. But when they do, I would imagine I would need the summer to recover anyway. So it looks like I'm going to have several months off, and I have planned to return to school in the fall of 24 to finally finish that last semester. And that's okay. I mean, I think I've come this far with all the challenges that I had just to complete my degree and go through life in general, that I'll be okay if I have to delay it by one semester. And I also look upon it as, we get guidance in our life if we're paying attention, and I want to pay attention. So maybe this is meant to happen because other opportunities, other doors will open because the ones before closed, but that doesn't mean that there's nowhere to go. So I know that there's something I need to see in this, and it's my belief that other opportunities are going to present themselves along the way, and I look forward to finding out what those are. And not long after my mother went into hospice, as a lot of you may know, we lost Jenny, our fellow booktuber, and that just kind of threw me. It affected me more than I thought it would. Jenny was one of the first booktubers that I watched, and I loved her very down-to-earth approach, and she's the one that really inspired me because I loved classics too, and she would read classics. And I remember one of the books that she read was The Cloisters, and how she really just raved about it, how wonderful it was. And she got me, and I went out and I purchased the book The Cloisters, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And now that book has a lot of sentimental value for me. I don't know, maybe it's because of what I'm going through right now. Jenny's passing has really it affected me more than I thought it would. And I even tuned into her memorial service, kind of like, because my brain was saying, is she really gone? Is she really gone? And in the front there in the church were the flowers and the little table there, and there was her urn. And it hit me, oh my gosh, that's Jenny. And it just, I can't watch her videos right now. It's going to be a while. It makes me sad that we lost Jenny. But yeah, that's kind of gotten to me. But let me tell you what I've done. I like to go to one of my local libraries. They have a fantastic Saturday sale every week. And in their basement, it's just wall-to-wall books. And I love going there. Each book, 90% of the time, is $1. And I find steals there. So let me tell you what I found this last time, and we'll go through them. A Nest for Celeste. What caught my eye was the cover. It's just so sweet and so calming and so lovely. And this book is in wonderful condition. It really is, and that's what I look for. Books in excellent condition. This is by Henry Cole, by the way. A story about art, inspiration, and the meaning of home. This looks like it's a very tender story. I'm going to add it to my bookshelf back here that you see. and a find that I didn't expect to see there, and it's coincidental, by the way. The Great Illustrated Classics, so it's the classic literature for children, and this one is on David Copperfield. And my kids used to read some of these. I used to get it for them, and they're just regular chapter books, simplified, abridged stories of classics. And what makes it interesting is that my project, my personal reading project, I don't really pick a number of books I want to read every year. I do for Goodreads, like, okay, I read 24, 25 books, whatever. At the end of the year, I pretty much do. But my personal project this year is I want to read, it's called my Copperfield Project, and I'm going to expand more on that in a separate video. But you know, the book Demon Copperhead came out, and I found out that it was a modern edition or a modern interpretation of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. And I thought, ooh, because I've been reading these modern interpretations of classics like the Jane Austen's classics. I read Ghosted and Pride. So Pride was a modern interpretation of Pride and Prejudice, and Ghosted was a modern interpretation of Northanger Abbey. And I just loved doing that. So I decided that this year I'm going to do one on David Copperfield because of the book Demon Copperhead. So before I read Demon Copperhead, I'm going to read David Copperfield. And because those of you who know me know that I like to look for different editions of a classic. So a graphic novel, a children's edition, or a YA edition of a classic. And I love to collect them all together, share them all with you. And then I like to read through each one of those before I get to the original writing. It just sort of adds something for me. That was a neat find. All right, the next book that I found is a book, it was translated from the Italian into English, and it's called Niccolò Machiavelli, Discourses on Livy. Now, for those of you familiar with Machiavelli, you know he wrote The Prince, which is about, I'm going to do a quote here from the book so you can see what's interesting about this. The Prince is a dispassionate analysis of all kinds of principalities that does not include reasoning on republics as it does in this discourses. The reader soon perceives that its author recommends the imitation, especially of what he calls new princes, private individuals who become princes of new states that they found. He emphasizes the most excellent and glorious examples of founders such as Moses, Cyrus, Romulus, and Theseus, but he does not seek to distinguish them much from ordinary tyrants. Accordingly, he advises their imitators to come to power and rule by force and fraud. Whereas in Discourses on Livy, it not only includes reasoning about republics, but recommends them over principalities. So this is a contrast to The Prince, and it really caught my eye. I thought, oh, I'm going to read this. So this is, I believe, medieval, early Renaissance era. So I'm going to put that in that particular bookshelf that I have, and I'm going to read that either before or after I read The Prince. So I like doing that too. The next book that I found, this is so cool. The Log of Christopher Columbus. So we know that this took place late medieval, almost at the, yeah. So let's say if the medieval times were from 400 to 1400 AD, this was early Renaissance when he discovered the American continent. So I love when reading history if I can find an original source, because it's of course their perspective, the person who's lived in that time, that we learn a lot about them in their original writings. So this is going to be cool when I get to that part of my chronological history study that involves Columbus and the discovering of the New World, and then, you know, what leads into that. So this was a really cool find. It's not in very, you know, it's I'd say good condition. You know, the corners are bent a little bit, which can be expected. But this is in good condition. Here's a sample. Look at that. I like it. And I like how it's shaped like a log, you know, like a ship's log. Cool. I like it. So, next one. The Federalist Papers. And normally, and this is a Dover publication, so it's one of the affordable publications of it. A lot of the times when I'm looking for an edition of the Federalist Papers, it'll always say excerpts of, and I don't want excerpts. I want the whole shebang. I want to read it through and decide what interests me, what doesn't interest me, what applies to what I'm learning at the time or reading at the time, and what doesn't. And this includes the whole thing. And it says the essays were written and published anonymously in New York newspapers during the years 1787 and 1788 by three of the Constitution's framers and ratifiers: Alexander Hamilton, General George Washington's Chief of Staff and First Secretary of the Treasury, John Jay, the first Chief Justice of the United States, and James Madison, father of the Constitution, author of the Bill of Rights, and fourth President of the United States. Good reference. So I'm going to enjoy this. And this is going to go into my late Renaissance, early modern section. And lastly, Born in Blood and Fire, A Concise History of Latin America. When we study American history, when you're studying, when we study American history, Latin American history is a part of that, as is Canadian history, of course. And I like to incorporate the two in my history studies. And I like the opening of the introduction by the author. The author is John Charles Chasteen. He is a professor at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. This was published, I believe, in 2009, and in the introduction he says, Latin America was born in blood and fire, in conquest and slavery. So that is where to begin, a brief introduction to Latin American history, cutting straight to the heart of the matter, identifying central conflicts and not mincing words. I like that approach. So this will go with my current collection. I think I have 3 other books on Latin American history. Plus I have first-hand writings, first-person writings, one from Las Casas and one from Diaz, who were both there at the conquest of Mexico. Diaz is coming from the perspective of a conqueror, of a conquistador, and Las Casas is coming from the perspective of a priest. And they're completely opposite in their view of the conquest of Mexico and the treatment of the indigenous population there. So that, I think, one more. Now this is another thing related to history. So the thing that I found is something I didn't know even existed. The timetables of American history. I have the big monster one called the Timetables of History. And I don't know if any of you are aware of this. This is one of these things that it will go through. This would be like the date in history on this column here. And these top sections are categories. So, literature and theater, religion, philosophy, learning, visual arts, music, science, technology, growth, and daily life. There's history and politics. And it will tell you what was happening in a certain country during a certain year and what different areas were affected and what was happening. And of course, as you move through history, more of those little squares get filled out. And this is the coolest reference to have on hand when you're reading literature, classic literature, because then you can look up the author, see when they were born, what was going on in the world around them at the time, and this can help you get a good context and frame of why maybe they wrote this particular work of literature. And I was excited to find they had one for American history, same breakdown. So we're looking at America, it'll say history and politics, right? So this is the category, history and politics. And then we're looking at what was going on during a certain year, which is way over here, in America, elsewhere, in the different category, history and politics. the arts, science and technology, and then miscellaneous. And it's really cool. So when you're going through American literature, early American literature, colonial literature, and then after we became independent from Britain, you can look up that author, find out what was going on in America at the time and elsewhere, and now you're getting a perspective of what influenced that author in their growing up years and their adult years. Was there some sort of topic that was the hot topic in the population at the time, and is that why they wrote this? Is what they wrote at this time even addressing that issue? I love that. So this was a great surprise find. So that was my last thing that I got this last Saturday. The last thing I'm going to cover is what I'm currently reading, and I'm finishing up with them. 3 books. 1, Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book. This was one of those things I bought way back and said I'm going to read, like a lot of my books. And I'm enjoying this. So this is like my light read, kickback read, whatever. And I posted it on Goodreads. I let you know where I'm at. This I bought at the airport when I was coming back from New York. I wanted something to read on the plane, and I saw this. 10 Lessons for a Post-Pandemic World from Fareed Zakaria. And this is a book I'm not going to read cover to cover. I'm going to look at the 10 topics and kind of like skim through some things, read more carefully through others. I think it's interesting what his perspective is on how the world has changed after the pandemic, because I think all of us can agree it really has changed. So stuff has changed, and some things will take us a long time to recover from. And this has been worldwide. The economy has been affected worldwide by the pandemic. So that's going to take a little more time to recover from, but just other things in general. I remember mentioning to my husband, it looks like people's driving post-pandemic has gotten worse. We kind of wonder, is that just us? Is that just our perspective, or is this really the case? And I think when we look at those crazy videos of people misbehaving on planes, I've been flying for years. I never saw people behave like that on planes until the pandemic hit. It's like, what the heck happened to us? But I've also read up on when people would have a plague in Europe, how that affected everybody afterwards. And there's a similar pattern. There's like a time of, insanity. People just pushing buttons and pushing the envelope and crossing over those boundaries that weren't crossed before. Post-trauma. But yeah, so I was curious, so I got the book. And one that I just ordered from eBay that I saw, and I don't even remember. You know how you read a book and you hear about another book, or you watch something on YouTube and someone recommends a book, or it's there, whatever. I don't remember where I found out about this book, but it was from another book, obviously. It's called Education's End: Why Our Colleges and Universities Have Given Up on the Meaning of Life by Anthony T. Kronman. And he is a Sterling Professor of Law, Yale Law School. And he's been teaching the directed studies, in the directed studies program at Yale since 2004. And this, I would think, would be under the category of educational philosophy. And he's more of a traditionalist. So this is a book in which he encourages those in the humanities to not neglect the classics, that they are an important framework and foundation for us as a society, and to relinquish them and focus in on more modern ideologies has not been good for us. And the only way to get us back into a humanities that teaches us as individuals to reflect on how we can best live, how we can be happy, how we can be fulfilled, how we can be true people, true individuals, true to ourselves and to our convictions, is to go back to what the humanities would teach, was the philosophers and the literary works that that emphasize that, looking inward. And how can I be the best person I can be so that that can reflect on society in general? And I have to say, I lean towards that. So because those of us who love the classics can soon understand the benefit of that, how different the classics are from modern works. And I think we can better appreciate modern works if we've had some exposure to the older traditional works. I think a holistic picture of everything. There aren't gaps there, and that's the purpose, I think, in studying the humanities. It's really reflecting on us as people, as individuals, and I think it helps us to live better and more fulfilled lives. So this I just got from eBay, and my only complaint is that it was listed in very good condition, but this was bent and it's kind of torn, and the pages were bent a little bit. But other than that, it arrived in good condition, and I was happy with the seller. I don't know if this damage happened in the shipping or if it was that way before, I don't know. But that's it, everybody. It's January. January is about to end. We're heading into February. So happy February, everybody, and happy Valentine's Day for those of you who celebrate. And thanks for hanging out. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.